This is the Big Idea, Big Moves podcast. This is the destination for high performers. We talk to people from different genres, different niches, just people doing really cool things in their space. We talk to lots of athletes. We talk to entrepreneurs, CEOs, scientists at times, just lots of people that have things that we can hear a little bit about their journey and what they're doing, and hopefully take away some of those things that we can apply to our own lives as well. So I have one of those guests today. Really excited about kind of jumping into this one. Just before we do that, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that we have a relationship with Third Z. And if you don't know what Third Z is, it's basically they create natural products that help athletes and high performers get better quality rest and recovery from physical and mental stress, some of those things as well. And their PM Recovery Collagen is melatonin free, sedative free, all of those things that help you get a good rest, but also support joint and muscle repair as well. It helps you get through your busiest days and toughest workouts. So go check them out. It's at Third Z, and that's THIRDZ or ZY.com, and use the code BIBM20 and you can save 20% today too. So definitely check that out and see if it's something you want to try. So today, really excited. We have Ashley Jerue with us today. She's a CrossFit athlete and a coach, and recently competed in the Games Semifinals. So hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that today. She's also the star of the movie Strong Enough, about the personal and physical story of an athlete that's looking to tackle some challenge, breaking some records in their sport, but so much more than that. And the movie was also executive produced by one of our previous guests, Brooke Ence, as well. So that's kind of a cool tie-in. So thank you, Ashley, for taking the time. I know we're kind of talking at a lunch hour here, so you could fit some time in. So I appreciate that. But maybe I'll first ask, what was your experience? I mean, you were doing the semis recently, which is a big kind of step and everything too. How did that go for you? And maybe we'll start from there.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was really nice because it was kind of a pleasant surprise. So it was just, go in with zero expectations,
Yeah.
meet as many people as you can, and yeah, have fun was kind of the guiding message there. It
Yeah.
was so cool.
Very cool. And I think that's your best result so far, right? To get to the semis and be able to do pretty well in the semis as well, which was nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, this was my third open, so I was
Yeah.
I was stoked.
Yeah, very cool. And actually, because you've obviously probably got some notoriety because of the movie and everything in that group as well. Was that a little bit different, knowing that you'd go to that maybe for the first time, but people actually probably know who you are and everything, that maybe you didn't have that in the past?
To be honest, I really didn't get that sense at all at semifinals. I mean, most of the people there, if they're not athletes, they're friends and family of athletes, and
Yeah,
a lot of those girls, that's their full-time job, so they're very like
yeah,
eyes forward, get it done, that kind of thing. And the movie, was I guess what I'd consider an indie film, so
yeah.
it wasn't super popular among the general population, I guess. So no, not really
Yeah,
any of that.
well, and you will find, I think it's funny because we've had a couple of CrossFit athletes on talking about what they're like when they're actually in competition, and they just talk about, there's, normally it's funny, Tia Toomey said that normally I'm a very bubbly kind of, extroverted person. When I'm there, I'm just all focused on what I'm doing at that point in time, and I don't have time to kind of have that interaction and stuff too. So that's part of that as well. So maybe we will talk a bit about kind of that movie experience for you, because from my understanding too is that you were asked to do it and you didn't know for sure if it was even kind of a real thing. And so just tell us a bit about kind of how that opportunity came up and what it was like.
Yeah, I guess it all started with an Instagram direct message from John Foss, the director, asking if I would be interested in a movie, which, when you get something like that in your
Yeah.
message request, you're kind of like, okay, sure. So I'm pretty sure I ignored it for a couple days before he messaged me again. I guess they had just kind of scrolled the CrossFit leaderboard from 2021, one of the two.
Yep.
And I think I was in the top 500 that year or something like that. And then they had criteria from there, US based.
Right.
sure, like appear, they didn't tell me all of the details, but I'm pretty sure that's how they narrowed it down from there. And then they found somebody gullible enough to say yes. So
Well, and that's so when you did say yes, I mean, one of the things is that you hadn't done much or any acting before, am I right? Like this was kind of your
none,
first
no.
foray. Okay, so none. So how did you get to where you had some comfort level around that when it's something you hadn't even experienced before?
Um, so John Foss and the whole production team were so great. He sent me, a bunch of materials on studying. There was a course that Natalie Portman had run, that had quite a few videos and modules that I studied for a while. John and I sat down for like half a day, a whole day maybe, and just watched clips from movies like The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke. Is that right?
Yep, yep,
And
yep.
Creed with Jordan Peterson. Jordan.
It's not Jordan Peterson. It's
No.
Jordan. But yes, yes.
His
We'll
name's
insert
Jordan.
it after. I know who you mean.
Can you
Yeah,
tell
of course.
it?
I know. No, and I should know that right off the top of my head too. And I can't recall it for some reason. But yes, you're right.
Michael B. Jordan. Is
Yes,
that
there
it?
you go.
Okay.
Yes.
We were gonna get there eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was just a lot of studying. I think it helped that he was okay with me just like paraphrasing some of the lines so they felt more comfortable coming out of my mouth.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, it was a lot of that. Everybody was patient. It helped that it was a really small crew and we filmed in a real CrossFit gym. The extras were real CrossFitters.
Oh,
So it
nice.
felt more like, my kind of environment anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess that's the one thing that would be interesting is you were actually doing like the whole movie for those people who haven't seen it is you're actually doing kind of workouts that are CrossFit related. So when you're in there in a CrossFit gym, it probably felt a lot more comfortable, feeling like maybe you were just doing a timed event and things like that that you normally would do when you're in there anyway. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We even got the whole crew to do a little CrossFit circuit with
Oh,
us.
really?
It was fun.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, was it intimidating because like were there yeah, like 'cause it's got to be strange when suddenly you're in there and there's cameras and there's all that stuff as well. Did you find it intimidating?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there were, quite a few actors there that were, had quite a bit of experience. Demetrius Gross, who played Shane, was one of them. Noah Kirshnick's got quite a bit of experience. It was Jake Storman. He's got a regular show on the CW, so it was really intimidating.
Yeah.
But I think they were all super patient. When I was freaking out because I didn't know what I was doing or how to change what I was doing. They were great like voices of reason to help me kind of figure out, how to resolve that, how to take it in the right direction.
Yeah.
So it was terrifying, but good company kind of superseded all that.
Yeah, yeah. And the movie has a lot of basis on resilience and and both whether it's personal or physical resilience in that movie. Did have you found because playing that is different? Like somebody watching it actually probably takes a lot of inspiration away from the movie to watch it, but as the person who had to go through that and everything, is that something that did it translate to your own kind of performance and stuff outside of the movie, or is it just something that I did my job and it's created a nice piece of art that does that?
No, I think, oh, that's such a good question because it absolutely did. So, and analogous to CrossFit, you're putting in this work day in, day out, you're working out, but you don't really see, especially if you're training by yourself, like I have been, you don't really see the outcome of that. You don't really see it until the end of a competition when the leaderboard is final. The movie was really similar. And because I didn't have a great grasp of the production and post production and everything that happens there, we're doing takes, we're doing something like, 10, 15 takes, which turns out is not a lot in the film world. And we're watching it after the fact. And I was like, man, I wish I would have done, 10 more takes of that because now
Yeah.
I can see what the outcome of that work was. And I just thought that, we thought we were being, tough and resilient at the time, but there's always more work that you can put in. And I think that's translated really well to training and to semifinals this year is that there's always more you could be doing, and not like volume or anything like that necessarily, but you could always be smarter. You could always learn more, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
if that
no,
answers
really.
the question.
No, I think that's interesting because I guess the other question would be, and this is maybe with your athletic performance stuff, is that um, how much of it is, especially maybe when you get to a semifinals level, like which is really high end kind of athletics happening at that point. How much of it for you is kind of mental performance? Like, do you do much from that end? And because a lot of people will say there's a certain level where everybody is pretty darn good, and what separates is whether or not you're able to either do very specific things or maybe mentally whether you're able to kind of do that.
Yeah, yeah. It's been so the past couple years I've been training at a gym that's been full of people that just uplift each other and help build one another up. And in the past, I would have let anxiety on how I felt I was supposed to do kind of overshadow what was actually happening at the time.
Yeah.
Um, but being surrounded by these people, by this community that has encouraged me regardless of performance, regardless of what the leaderboard says, that believed I could do it in the first place, has been such a game changer. So making sure that I'm actively putting that back into that community, I think has been the biggest change, the biggest kind of breath of fresh air that's helped that mental performance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people who maybe haven't been exposed to whether it's a CrossFit community or those types of fitness facilities maybe don't understand that there's a real community attached to that as well. That's maybe a little bit different than going to a large style gym where you don't have those kind of same connections with people as well. And so that's obviously kind of been a big help for you over the last little while as well.
Yeah, there's a reason they make CrossFit cult jokes. It's because we
Yeah.
are so close with our gym. We, we do know each other. It's not just like clients and coaches, athletes and whatever else. It really is like, especially as an adult, when it gets harder and harder to make new friends and find people that share your interests and values. It really is. It's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so the other thing that that the movie and probably bleeds into what you're doing now is just the kind of having a strong female lead in that movie is pretty cool. That like there aren't as many of those, especially sports movies that have a strong female lead. So maybe did that play into you taking the role at all? But now that it's done, is also what's that like knowing that you play that type of role in something that maybe isn't out there nearly enough.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's when you see, I guess, modern media and the presentation of a strong female lead, my mind immediately goes to the Marvel movies. Those actresses, I mean, they're beautiful and they're brilliant at what they do, and and everything that goes with that. But have you seen the men compared to the women, like in
Yeah,
terms of build? It might be like a small, tiny subset of strong women that are built like me or built more muscularly than I am. But that kind of representation, I think, is so important. I think it leads for girls seeing their bodies as what their body can do for them, what they're capable of, regard regardless of what their body looks like. And I think trying to represent that is probably the scariest part of the whole thing. I've got
yeah,
my own nieces and nephews, but they've known me since I was a teenager and had those insecurities myself, and
yeah,
still to this day.
sure.
But it's a different thing when it's a lot more global
Yeah.
than just my own little bubble.
Well, and how cool is that knowing that there are, I mean, they may not be your nieces, they may be a whole bunch of other young girls or people that have just started this because there is a real movement now of young, especially young women that are doing CrossFit. I mean, you look at who's doing really well. A lot of them are actually very young now. And how cool is that to know that maybe you're kind of a role model in some of that as well?
It's cool. intimidating and it can be a lot of pressure, but I think as long as you stay true to who you are in that, then people can understand that there's variety for what that kind of role model really means. It's not one specific, like, oh, okay, we saw Natalie Portman got jacked for Thor, right? But that's not the only definition of what it means to be like a strong female lead or superhero. You know,
Yeah.
there are multiple facets to that. And I think that's important to keep in mind because the comparison game could easily turn into, oh, she's muscular, but she's lean, or, you know, she's got abs, or she's got, you know, XYZ. When I don't think it needs to be, I think it should be the opposite of that.
Yeah, yeah. I actually that would be an interesting question because you're young, and you know when you're when you think of that though, have you seen? Because I've asked other people, and I think of people that you'd know. So I would ask Annie Thorisdottir at one time, just about like a very similar question. Have you seen change first of all in the perception? And it's interesting because she would say, well, it's different in Iceland. There is not the same. I didn't actually notice until I went to other countries that people looked at me differently. So it is interesting that there's even cultural differences from country to country. But I wonder, like, have you seen change in the openness that people have and the perception, or is it worse because of like social media and all of those things as well?
I don't know that it's necessarily better or worse because of social media. I think social media is a magnifying glass for those things. I don't know that it is changing perception so much as magnifying either end of that spectrum. So you've got the extra loud people, you know, complaining and saying it's worse and we've lost femininity. And then you've got people on the other end saying, you know, weakness doesn't benefit anyone. You know, you need to be fit. And you've got like the OG Gymshark models who were, you know, tiny, and that was their fitness was you know, glute training it day in and day out.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know if that.
No, that's yeah, it's an interesting perspective only because you do get both sides of it depending on who you talk to and how things are changing or not changing. Um, you know, one of the other things is goal setting. We talked to a lot of people about, you know, and interested to know. I mean, obviously the movie was a good example of just something that probably just jumped, you know, dropped there and hey, take the opportunity, of course. But do you have very specific kind of goals, both physically and outside of that, or how does that work for you?
I do try and set small goals. They're never hard lined. For
Hmm.
example, I've been wanting to put on some weight. I know that would help with the weights that I lift, but putting on a lot of muscle and putting on mass is something I struggle with. So I think a lot of the times, and especially when I'm working with like nutrition clients, for example, if you set a hard lined goal, they're going to hit that goal and they're going to say, okay, like now what? But you would rather have them focus on what that goal changes for them, what achieving that benchmark does for them. You know, if your goal is to lose 10 pounds, okay, what can you do 20 pounds skinnier that you couldn't do before? Or
Yeah.
what's changed that? Um, so all that being said, I'd like to get back to semifinals next year as specific as a goal I've got. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, as long as I'll keep doing it as long as I enjoy the sport. And if any of my goals ever, you know, put a damper on that, then they'll have to change.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's a healthy way of looking at it. Uh, how about mentors? Like whether this is in kind of your, you know, your field of expertise or outside of that, you know, who do you look up to? Do you have people that have helped you as you've kind of went through this path?
Yeah, of course. I am so lucky to be a part of a gym that has a lot of strong, impressive women. Sam Briggs being one of them. She's been a huge mentor for me since I joined the gym almost 3 years ago. I kind of invited myself to her small training group, and she's put up with me since then. You know, the owner there, Melissa Jambrone, Laura Francini, they're awesome. Maggie Perrins, another crazy athlete who is, you know, semifinal level. Um, Marie Cotter, just strong, badass women. You know, they say you are the sum of your five closest friends or the people that you surround yourself with. Um, So I try and hang out with that group as much as I can.
Yeah, why not, right? If you've got the access to those people, that's fantastic. And along with that a little bit too is that obviously you spend a lot of time, I'm sure, in the gym because it is your kind of social connection as well as all those other things. Um, but how do you? I mean, again, I don't want to keep saying you're young, but you're young enough that I'm sure you have want to have a social life, you want to do all those things and everything else that you want to kind of do in life. Um, how do you try to balance those things when I know like training at certain times is probably pretty heavy for somebody that's trying to do it at that level. So how do you try to manage that process?
Um, I think you have to be very specific with how you plan out your week. I am a pretty introverted person, so my social meter gets full pretty quick.
Yeah,
So, so seeing those people and taking the time to warm up or stretch with a buddy, to take class, whenever I can, is great. And it helps that, we're kind of in that off-season period right now, unless you're going to the games.
yeah,
So to just let loose a little bit. So I do work full time. I've got coworkers that are very supportive. They help fill that social cup.
yeah,
So I'm pretty blessed in that aspect.
yeah. And so you're introverted. How did you feel that was learning how to act and stuff in front of other people? Was that because I mean I could say that I am as well, but I mean I know it can also be different when you're kind of in an environment where it's just you're comfortable and things like that. But what was it like for you knowing that there's probably a lot of people there that are extraverted for sure if they're actors and do that all the time?
Yeah, yeah. Well, every introvert needs their extroverts, right?
Yeah,
Everybody there was so nice, and it was a very, very small casting crew. So somebody had asked me a while ago, it was like, how was it being like, why were you so awkward at semifinals, but you're okay being in a movie? And the movie was so different. It was, one person with a camera and then maybe the director off to the side and then one or two other actors on set. It was a very small group. The character I am playing is not, super extroverted in her mannerisms and her expressions.
yeah,
So there was never any need to feel like I had to force that
mhm,
aspect of my personality out.
yeah.
Semifinals is tens of hundreds of people around you with a bunch of cameras. They're in
Yeah.
your face while you're trying to sweat and work out. There's a big screen and you can see how stupid you look on it. It was a very different feeling.
So how close is the character to you? Like, do you find are you very different?
Not very, no. And that was one of the first things a lot of my siblings, my family said was, "Oh my gosh, like you didn't do any acting. That's Sam is you." Um, which helped a lot. I was telling my older brother about how the director had to get me to stop rolling my eyes so much when Sam was meant to be pissed off because that's not what Sam would do. And my brother was like, "Yeah, we've been trying to tell you that for years. Thank him for us."
That I'm sure that really made it much easier when you could actually get yourself into the role that easy. So that's very cool. And the other thing is just if you um, you know is there something that really kind of stands out as okay, this was the best experience that I've had so far? Whether it's games related or movie experience, is there something that stands out that wow, this was just really super cool so far?
Um, man, I mean, all the people that I've met and interacted with in the last couple years in regards to the movie and semifinals have been incredible. Absolutely every member of cast and crew was amazing. I still talk to most of the cast. I talk to John at least a couple times a week. Um, how my all of the friends, I'm from Cincinnati, all of the friends from my gym that flew or drove down to cheer me on in Orlando. They made t-shirts, and I guess just the overwhelming amount of kindness and support from the people around it has been probably the biggest highlight.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you said you feel blessed, so that's obviously very lucky that you have people that would be that invested in doing it and everything too. Um, So, you had mentioned that when when you were offered this role, it was something that, you didn't even know if it was real and all those things. But when it did become real and you realize, oh, this is a thing. But you also have mentioned you'd never acted before. You'd done kind of, this was something probably a little bit out of your comfort zone, considering, what you're like. Um, there's probably tons of people out there who are thinking whether it may not be acting in a movie, but it might be starting something new. It might be going to the gym the first time. I mean, in a CrossFit gym, you will have heard this lots of times. There's lots of people that are intimidated to go the first time and things like that. So, do you have a couple of tips on, being somebody that, was in a position like that and jumped at the opportunity? Do you have a couple of thoughts on what people should think of when they go to do that?
Yeah, I mean, every opportunity, every new thing that comes your way, isn't something you need to jump at, but life is too short to say no to everything. I think the life is made richer by the experiences and the people that have been involved. And if there's an experience that gets you involved with more people, then it's probably not a bad thing. You know, YOLO sounds so outdated now, but
Yeah.
it's still true. It's if you can't if you can't jump now, when can you? Um, so just yeah, I guess that's super generic and
No, but
not
that's
super insightful.
no, but it probably is the most true for people as well, is that the scariest things sometimes are where you grow the most or you get the most kind of opportunity that comes out the other end of it. So,
Oh,
um,
yeah, anxiety, fear, new experiences, those are muscles. And if you
yeah.
never train them, they'll atrophy and you'll find yourself on your couch Friday, Saturday, Sunday, wishing you were doing what the people on Instagram, on TikTok are doing.
That is the perfect thing right there, is that you gotta do those things and flex the muscle no matter how hard it is, because it regardless of how much you do. So actually, thank you so much for doing this. I mean, I really appreciate it, and being so open with kind of how you went through this process and everything as well. If people want to kind of follow what you're doing, first of all, what's the best way to do that for them?
Yeah, my only social media is Instagram, and that's at Ash Jerue.
All right. And what we'll do is, as well, is we're going to put that in the show notes so that people can click through and follow what you're doing as you go through this. And then obviously we'll do the same thing for the movie so that people can kind of find their way to being able to see it. I know that it's a really cool one to watch. So definitely if you haven't been able to see it yet, take a look in the show notes and get through there and definitely watch apparently you'll see exactly what Ash is like in real life by the sounds of it. So, but again, thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And, hopefully, we'll see things go through and see you in the semifinals again this time next year.
Fingers crossed.
All right. And to everybody else, again, if you haven't hit subscribe on the podcast, do that now. We have great people every week, just like Ashley. We will talk again soon on Big Idea, Big Moves.